Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. I'd like to welcome all the viewers who are on a lunch break from the TechCrunch event. I hope you're enjoying it. I certainly am. Actually, I haven't even seen it yet. But I'm hoping that there's going to be some on-demand stuff later on, so I can take a look at it. We've got, or we used to have Robert Scoble, but right now I'm seeing all these flying birds on the screen, so I'm not sure what that's all about.
It's some new decorations on the wall that I have.
Okay. Also joining us is Danny Sullivan, back from a much-needed vacation.
I have those decorations. I just haven't unpacked them yet.
Well, I finally unpacked
because I've been
mine.
on vacation.
Also joining us from CloudBlog and Salesforce is my colleague John Taschek.
I don't have any of those birds, but I think I need them right now.
Well, you could use some bandwidth, but that's another story.
Yeah, I see that. It's diminishing.
Yeah. And our special guest, who's going to shake things up, as he always does, in some inscrutable way. He seems to get us where we need to get going. The inventor of well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but Seth Goldstein, who's the co-founder of Sticky Bits. Welcome, Seth.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, so what does anybody want to talk about first? I have to just get this out of the way. Danny Sullivan's ludicrous attempt at getting attention by going back from the iPhone 4 to the 3G or maybe even the 2G as he searches in vain for an Android phone that he's going to actually like.
I don't need attention that bad, and I certainly didn't need to stand in the line and go through the return of it all. But yeah, I got all excited about the iPhone 4. I ran out, stood in line, and got one that day, even though I swore I wasn't going to do it, and I was going to hang out until it came to Verizon. And then I found myself getting more and more angry with it because I still had all the same network problems that I had with AT&T with my old iPhone, but now I had this new phone. It was like having this wonderful new car and no gas to run it on.
Well, why don't you just move?
We'll move to another network.
No, move to a house near AT&T.
No, it's not. I actually don't use my phone that much at home. I use it when I'm out and I'm traveling. So, actually around in our area here, I tend not to have some of those problems. I mean, occasionally a signal drops out if I'm, and I'm using it when I'm rollerblading or whatever, it might be slow, but usually it's all right. But it's been more the case that I'm in San Francisco, or I'm in the Bay Area, or I'm in Silicon Valley, or I've gone to New York, or I've gone to some concert, or I'm at some event, and the phone just craps out on me. I can't call my wife, who's like 2 feet away or whatever, to actually ask if you got the kids or something like that. And that's kind of part of the phone is that it should be a phone. So I just was done with it. If they had come out with if there was an iPhone for Verizon, I'd have jumped and I'd gone that way, and it's a beautiful phone and I love everything about it in also many ways, but I just can't take the network anymore. So I'm going to move off to Verizon, and I'll find an Android phone that has gotten better, and I might still have to do a little more work than what I was used to doing with the iPhone, but yeah, I'll survive.
And you have an iPad, so you're still on the iPhone.
I know, I have an iPad, so that's like a big iPhone anyway, so I still feel part of the family.
Okay, well, you're on, what is it when you get thrown out of school, but it's only, you're on suspension.
Suspension, yeah. It's better than detention, I suppose. But
also on suspension of belief is Robert Scoble, who seems to be reading his iPhone and, is this flip scam again? Okay.
I was just catching up on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, that's great.
While you guys were talking about
Robert Scoble's personal aggregator. It works great for him, so it must be good.
It'll work great for everybody someday.
Yeah.
It's like the iPhone. It'll eventually work if you don't touch it in the wrong place.
Well, Danny is the proof positive of that, the failure of that theory, but since he's now given up. And we should have a countdown clock about when you return. I think that would be interesting. only not since you left, but how long till you return?
To the iPhone?
Yeah, I mean, come on, give me a break.
I mean, I'll go to Verizon. I'll probably go on a 1-year contract with them at least. So I'm not going to be back for a year. There's Now that I've left it, there's no incentive for me to jump in until they make a new model. So, I'm out for a year. I might be out for longer than that because Android keeps getting better. I don't.
Yeah, how many apps have you bought?
Not that many.
Okay. I have $200 worth of apps, so that's $200 worth of lock-in.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, it's going to make a difference. If you've got a lot invested in apps and you use certain apps, that's certainly going to make you locked in. And it's just the same way that some people didn't want to leave, like, their PC to go over to the Mac because at some point it was like, why have all this software? But you know what? The apps eventually, as I think on the computers, start to get improved or start to get updated or start to get replaced. So, you've got short-term lock-in. I don't think you've got
Yeah,
long-term
they'll always,
lock-in.
Yeah, the problem is, Danny, I'm talking to a lot of app developers, and they're noticing they're not getting paid from the Android platform. People are not buying apps on Android, and so that means that the better developers are still investing more of their time in the iPhone platform, even if they're doing both. And that's going to be a lock-in of a kind for a while.
I think it's still the leading platform, but it's interesting where the iPhone is sort of like the PC of the mobile world, and all the arguments about, well, everybody's using it or everybody supports it. Those are a lot of things you could say about the PC. And today, if you're using a Mac, there's still stuff you just can't get to run. Either you have to run an emulator or whatever, but the Mac still survives. But I think the interesting thing to me with Android is in so short a period of time, at least for me, it actually became a viable alternative to the iPhone. And the other amazing thing to me is how it has filled that big chunk of space that used to be Windows Mobile. I mean, 4 years ago, when you go to Verizon shop, it was all Windows Mobile smartphones.
Yeah, before that it
all
was
Android smartphones.
And it was Symbian before that, and Symbian and Windows Mobile are in deep doo-doo as a result.
Yeah.
So I mean that's great. Isn't that what Google's post search business model is crushing the market share of their competitors?
Well, they're getting. It's interesting because Google's under a lot of fire right now from various analysts who are looking at how much money that Apple makes off of their phone, and Google's not making any money directly, and they're almost being attacked like, see, Android's a failure because you're not making money off of it. And I kind of scratch my head because I think, they've done exactly that. They've taken and brought out a whole new platform as an alternative to the iPhone, where it's harder for Apple to decide, we don't like Google anymore, so we're going to switch the default. You can't do that as easily on the Android.
Okay, we'll come to it. I've been desperately trying to wrench this away from my own particular myopia,
Sure.
But I'm just going to do it by fiat, which is move to Seth, and we'll start talking in the same place. Which is Google in trouble, Seth?
No.
Okay.
I don't think
well,
so.
That's it. I want to thank everybody who came.
End of show.
I see, Steve, I see Google as like Toyota.
I think Google's in
and
trouble
Apple
from Facebook.
I think I see Apple as BMW, and BMW sells fewer cars, but it has a better brand, and a better experience. I have 2 Android phones. I have a Verizon phone, and I have a brand new Samsung phone, which actually the Samsung is really nice. Danny, if you get an Android phone, I would look at the Samsung phones. They're really fast. They work pretty good in the hand.
Who's that? Is that you?
I don't know. Somebody has an airplane going overhead. It'd be nice if you hit me.
It's not.
Something like that happens.
Well, if somebody would tell me where the airplane is, then I would mute it. Nobody's.
That was probably me, but it's gone now.
Okay, good, excellent. So, right, I take your point, Robert, and I think that, like I said, we'll get back to it. But I still want to know from Seth what he was saying about Google being in trouble.
I guess I don't think about them as much in trouble from Apple as I do from Facebook.
Yeah,
in terms of
I
social.
I didn't say from anybody in particular. I just said, are they in trouble?
It hasn't been proven that they can get organic distribution for a social strategy. They can articulate social media pretty well. And there's rumors of these partnerships with game companies like Zynga. It's just unclear that Google, as a brand, has a license for its own social graph.
And the value of the social graph?
Significant, as we've seen from Facebook.
Well, I mean, how have we seen that with Facebook from a revenue perspective?
Yeah, from a revenue perspective, from an earnings perspective, from every perspective you can imagine.
Well, from an aggregation of customers, that's a no-brainer. But the revenue, I mean, yeah, they're making money, but are they making? They're not making Google money.
Well, eventually.
I don't look at it that way. Google didn't make Microsoft money for a long time before, and we all thought it was relevant, I remember writing about it in 98, 99 and thinking it was the coolest thing ever, and I never saw it as a revenue generating engine until 95? I'm sorry, 2005, 2004, somewhere in that range. And so if you look at the world as revenue, you're going to miss the innovation, and you're going to miss what they're really doing to Google. They're hiring the best employees from Google. The kids that come out of college right now are looking at Facebook or Google and going to Facebook, or wanting to go to Facebook, and Facebook has put some sort of boundary around the growth of Google, and it at least that's the thinking. And if that becomes true, that's very disruptive to Google.
So, John, we were trying to decide whether the picture is frozen or whether you're frozen. Do you want to?
I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll turn off the video because AT&T's outside my house right now trying to fix some telephone lines that may be affecting the DSL. But as long as you can stand the Van Gogh, image of.
I kind of like it actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like better that way too. As far as Google goes, I mean, a couple of years ago, maybe a little more, when the stock price was hitting near 500, a lot of people predicted that they wouldn't be able to attract a lot of new talent because the stock price is so high, and there was no upside for a lot of the people that they were trying to get on board, because how much higher it could go, it'd only go down, and the stock would be underwater. I think they probably face a little bit of that, but one other thing to look at for Google is that they have this huge cash position. Some analysts think they have too much cash, and but if you look at their spending spree in the last year, they're buying a ton of companies, and they're kind of going to get some innovation from those companies. At least you think they would. Now, there's no clear pattern on what kind of companies they are buying. Some are in music, some are in advertising, some in travel, some are in photo sharing. So it's really hard to tell where they're focused. But they could turn up that engine. That's a lever they have that they can crank up on some innovation by just buying a bunch of innovation type companies, in the Valley or elsewhere. So I don't think it's
both
bad.
companies, by the way, are amassing about $40 million a day, and in their cash stores. And if they don't spend that, it starts hitting their bottom line. And both companies, Apple and Google, they're both very profitable and building up cash stores. And I think that's, you're going to see the M&A guys I've been talking with who are involved in selling companies to these guys are saying that you're about to see a lot of acquisition. I mean, Disney's in there and just spent $1 billion this week, or this last week, acquiring social gaming companies like Tapulous and what's the other one?
Playdom.
Playdom.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on these companies to spend the cash.
Seth?
Yes.
How do we turn this? How do we turn this into a discussion of location and social media and the other things that we talked about?
Probably via Facebook and the threat to Foursquare that has never come. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. So,
I have a premise, right? My premise is we've seen a graduation of different forms of media the last 10 years, starting with web pages, and Yahoo's probably the best example. And then Google showed us that search is a form of media. Facebook has shown us that people are a form of media. Twitter has shown us that a status update in 140 characters is a form of media. We didn't think that at the time. And I think what location-based services has shown us is that places are media now.
Yeah.
And places are media objects.
Did you guys see that Apple is patenting a bunch of applications? That was just shown off today.
What kind of applications?
Yeah, things like what Siri is going to show you. Let me zoom that back in. You know, they have a patent for things like, you know, what's the closest bank and how are you going to interact with that bank when it shows up on your iPhone. I think some of the patents are misguided, but I can see it's the Siri team who is now in charge of the iPhone, the future of the iPhone, and they're patenting some of the things that they brought to bear here. And I just interviewed the VCs who funded Siri, and they weren't allowed to tell me what Siri is doing at Apple, but the kinds of winks that they were giving me were telling me that it is the future of the iPhone. And think about what Siri's already done. I mean, here I put in, you know, what can I help you with? Find me the nearest banks near here. Okay, I found these banks within a few miles of your current location. And, you know, Seth, you were just talking about location and how it's changing everything. Well, now it can bring back all sorts of different experiences. It can bring back news. It can bring back, you know, surf reports. It can bring back all sorts of stuff. I just interviewed OpenTable, which is part of the back end of what's going on here. So if you make a restaurant reservation, it goes into you know, Citrella's reservation system and comes back and says, you know, you can reserve a spot at 8 o'clock for 2 people. And I just interviewed Spa Finder. So if you want a massage or a spa treatment, like the Ritz has their system already down the street, and same thing as OpenTable, you can talk to that reservation system and get a spot on Saturday afternoon for a spa treatment. All of those things, when they get hooked up by something like Siri, or Google's trying to create a competitor, and when all those things get hooked up, you're going to have a magical new experience that looks a lot like the Dynabook that Apple showed off in the 80s. You know, where you just talk to an assistant on a slate like this, and it goes and does stuff for you.
So, Danny, how do you think Google responds to this alleged threat?
Well, I mean, it's magic, so how can they respond? Everything that Matt does is magical.
Well, they just bought a artificial intelligence company, didn't they? A semantic web company. Who did they just buy?
They've got a bunch of companies.
MetaWeb. They just bought MetaWeb. MetaWeb is a piece of the.
I guess my perspective on Siri is it hasn't really done anything revolutionary in the time that's been out there. I haven't played with it much.
I think you totally missed what's going on in the back end of this thing.
Maybe I am totally missing it, but at the front end, it hasn't seemed to change anybody's search habits in a major way so far. Maybe
not yet, because there's not enough things on the back end. There's only 40 services, and if you go outside of those, for instance, I can talk to Siri and say, find me all the people who are checked in at the TechCrunch party tonight, or right now, the TechCrunch Crunch Up, and you know there's an answer for that because Foursquare has that data. Foursquare has an API, but Foursquare hasn't yet been welded into the Siri front end. And so Siri comes up with a stupid answer. Now, what happens if Siri opens up so that every single Apple application hooks into the Siri engine in some way and can be talked to by the Siri engine? That's why it's revolutionary. It's not that you're going to use it today because it only does 40 services, and you know it's cool when the services work. It's really pretty cool, but it it fails too many times to really become part of your life. What if it doesn't fail anymore?
Well, when it doesn't fail anymore, then I get more excited about it, I guess. But I mean, there's
But
been
this
any
is
number.
why this is a play for next year's iPhone. This isn't a play for today.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, so Robert, I'm just really jaded, okay, on search stuff. I mean, I've seen them come and I've seen them go. With
It's
this is
not
going to be
search stuff.
revolutionary.
This is
Yes,
not
it
search.
is.
It's not
Does
search.
it help you locate stuff? Does it help
It's not
you?
search.
Go ahead, Seth.
It's not search of a web page. It's artificial intelligence that understands your utterances.
Oh my God! It's
your
artificial
intent.
intelligence. Well, then it must be awesome, Robert. Search.
Well,
is
no, I'm
not-
telling you what's
no.
going on here because
let me
Apple
finish.
bought this company for a reason, dude, and this is coming. I've seen what this thing does and how it hooks up to web services, and when it has a web service there, it is revolutionary.
Seth, just talk.
Okay, so I think Siri can do a lot of things. I don't think it's as complicated as you make it out to be in terms of what they're going to use it for. I think it's just it's the index, or it's the directory for the App Store, and we've learned that for any developer, being featured or being top grossing app, whether it's on the iPad or the iPhone, is the distribution. So Siri to me feels like it's the front end to, potentially the front end to the App Store. It'll remain closed because that is Apple's algorithm, just Google has an algorithm for PageRank. I don't know what Android is going to do, or whether they're going to use their existing index and their existing introduction to Android apps. But I think, as applications proliferate, obviously, finding them and those that get listed above the fold on the home screen are going to dominate, and there's a lot of money to be had in that.
I'm just trying to think of a way to use a joke around anti-semantic analysis. Because I don't think, I think that the idea of throwing firepower as FlipScam is doing with semantic analysis. I think that's right up there with voice recognition. It's just going to never get there. Anybody want to comment on that, John?
I disagree. But
Oh, of course you disagree. You brought it up. So I'll let you defend yourself in a second. But John, do you see the value of semantic analysis actually being there at some point in the reasonably near future?
I guess people look at semantic analysis and have, just the way they look at an artificial intelligence 20 years ago as something that would just, change the entire world whenever it was released, and then every 10 years there's a new kind of thing that happens around it, and everyone's looking for kind of a holy grail around it. But the fact is, it's iterative and it's very slow. So little bits and pieces of it are coming every year and are folded in, so that you get to the point where something like what Robert's talking about with Siri can exist. But I guess I look at it that it's farther away than next year. It's next year's iPhone announcement. Maybe they have it in there. Maybe they make it work. But it seems like it's a much more iterative process. I think it's fascinating to watch. I think there'll be a lot of investment in there. But I think also, because it's still early on it, that a lot of this investment won't pay off for a lot of companies. Maybe Apple can make it work. Maybe Google can make it work. Maybe they do something around their semantic with MetaWeb, and maybe they do something with Yelp and tie them in together. Maybe who knows? Something will happen, but it won't be as a big a thing, as a shocking thing as some of the other products that are out there.
Robert?
Well, you look at FaceTime, right? I mean, I had a Nokia phone 3 years ago with a front-facing camera and video conferencing, and we might have been doing the same kind of argument then, like, it's sort of a stupid thing,
Well, Danny did the same argument yesterday about FaceTime. So go ahead.
But I never, with a Nokia phone, I never had anybody wake me up in the middle of the night begging me to try FaceTime. And I get lots of calls now from around the world, people asking me, hey, can I try FaceTime with you? And I know you have an iPhone 4, and I know you're on Wi-Fi. So can we
It's
do
Scoble
some?
roulette.
It's Scoble roulette, right? But I
Right.
never
Which
had that with
tells
a
you
Nokia
that-
phone.
which
I mean,
tells you it's
there's
not
more
that
people in the
big a
world
deal.
with Nokia phones, right? I should have had that kind of experience with Nokia phones far before I had it with Apple. And Apple takes something that we all had, but makes it both usable, and also makes it aspirational. With their advertising and stuff. And that's what I think is going to happen here again. It'll be interesting to see what shows up. I mean, I totally disagree with you about the voice recognition. Let me just see if I can demo this. Hold on a second. Find me sushi near Half Moon Bay. Oh, I don't have my mic set up on here.
Ah,
So let me go
Cough.
figure that one out.
It's magical.
yeah.
Testing.
What's the touch symbol for cough?
Look at that. Testing. So
It's excellent.
find me sushi near Half Moon Bay. All right, and look at how good it is. And
Find me sushi near Half Moon Bay.
and you go and you say go, and it says finding sushi near Half Moon Bay. Let me make it bigger so you can see what it's doing. And this is
Oh,
really
it's
cool.
amazing. Oh, look. It's a map. Oh, it's a map from Google. I just spoke into my phone, and it gave me sushi near Half Moon Bay.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. It's magical. Oh my God, it's magical.
Okay. So now
Dave-
go and say, can you get me a restaurant reservation at Half Moon Bay Sushi Main Street? And
Restaurant
your experience will
at
fall
Main
apart because
Street
it doesn't
Sushi.
hook into OpenTable's API. Siri does. And
I
so
know it's awesome because I would never be able to get the phone number and call them. Oh my God, if we didn't have Siri, my world would never change on that friggin' phone, would it? What
Yeah.
I'm saying is, because I didn't really get a chance to respond to what you'd said, it is search. Search is any time you try to get an answer to something. Search does not mean I sat down and I typed in words into a box. Search is any time I'm getting an answer provided to me from some way. So what Siri is a search interface. Sure, it can do tasks and it can do these different things for you, and those are very cool. But what I'm telling you is, from my experience, I've seen any number of wonderful revolutionary tools that should do all sorts of super things, and what makes them successful is if people actually start using them because they immediately fulfill their needs. And I just haven't seen a lot of people taking off. The same thing when you go with FaceTime. You're like, well, why didn't this happen with the Nokia phone? Well, first of all, not that many people had the phone.
oh, that's not true. Come on.
No, I don't think
Nokia still today has many times more market share, even in smartphones, than Apple does.
Not that many people had front-facing phones. And
Absolutely, they
with
did on
broadband
Nokia phones. Come on, you go to Europe, everybody has a front-facing phone. Give me a break.
Yeah, Robert, I've been in Europe, and every phone.
Give me a
everybody
break.
I know,
Look at
we
the
had,
sales
like, one-
numbers. Nokia sells many times more front-facing phone cameras than Apple's ever sold. Give me a break.
Clearly,
if
Robert,
that's true,
clearly,
why
Robert,
haven't I gotten a call like that? I get calls from Apple users about this stuff. I don't get calls
If
from Nokia users.
I could finish talking,
Because of the
I
time
would tell
difference.
you why. So, my experience, actually having lived in Europe 4 years ago, we had one single camera on the phone. We often didn't have 3G, and we often didn't have Wi-Fi everywhere. So I already think that's probably one of the reasons why you didn't have many people doing it. But hey, you're getting these calls now. What does that tell me about the fact that people are asking you, can they FaceTime with you? That they don't have anybody else to FaceTime with.
Okay,
So how
well-
is FaceTime successful?
All right, so
And, how has that been revolutionary? It's like, oh, I got this thing. I
well,
need to do something.
Robert's right about FaceTime. You're wrong, but I think you're right about.
We're not using it now.
Oh, no, of course they are. FaceTime
No,
is
you're not using it now. When's the last time you used
the only
it?
reason I'm not using it now is because they haven't unbundled the protocol so that it works with iSight. As soon as it works with iSight, it's going to be used. Instead of having to worry about where Robert is, as long as he's within Wi-Fi range, or or has a a Sprint phone or a Verizon phone with a tethering option,
Yep.
this whole show is going to go to that.
Yep.
I mean, we just lost Seth on the old technology. I mean, this is the very reason that I don't know who said it. Maybe John said it, that that this stuff is going to start wherever it starts, but it is going to become the way that people use their time. And FaceTime is not a small thing; it's a huge thing because it has this ability to be able to transcend space and time. And we may think that if you look at the ads are very powerful because they tap into the emotion of what this provides. And anybody who has who has to travel a lot and has young kids, I mean, your post I thought was excellent because you defined, your kids are a little older now, so it's less of a draw. But along the time continuum between having little children and little grandparents, if you follow what I'm saying, the sort of the curious case of Benjamin Button in reverse. 90% of that time, these technologies are going to become emotionally critical to us. So then the question becomes, how many people are actually going to be using this stuff? And the reason that I disagree with you about FaceTime is that the more that people complain about the iPhone 4, the more they buy it. It's kind of in reverse. When we attack Flash, and Adobe stock goes up because they're being, nobody cares about Flash to begin with. Mm. Can you answer that? So the marketplace is going to grow rapidly and significantly, and once third-party developers get their hands on these APIs and knit them into things like Foursquare, this is going to explode. So I don't think that we're months away. I think that we're certainly not years away. We may not even be months away. I think we're weeks away from an explosion in these kinds of location-based services around real-time and video. That's why this show has a certain something to it. Is our experiencing something in real time, which is across. I mean, we're all relatively close to each other, but when somebody's on from London or from New York or whatever, it takes on this sort of magic. You use that in a what's pejorative way, and it's funny, but it's also, what it was the Arthur C. Clarke line about magic is, whatever's, innovation is whatever's indistinguishable from magic, or the opposite of that. I mean, this is the turf that Jobs plays in, and he's a master at it. And he's got a ready audience that, gets enough money back into their bank accounts every 6 to 8 weeks to be able to go out and buy it again, over and over. And that's,
by the way, I found it very interesting that Danny pulled out his Android phone and did the voice search. And to me, it really isn't Apple versus Google. It's Apple and Google against the rest of the world. And does the rest of the world have this kind of interface? Does Windows Phone 7 have voice that works so well?
They will.
They will, but right now they have no apps. They have no voice, and they have a UI that sort of gets worse as you dig into it.
Seth, you were trying to say something. Oh, well, I don't hear you. That would be a problem. Hang on.
People's
Go
feedback
ahead.
on.
Could you say it
is
again?
What I'll call the shift from push to pull with these location-based services. If you think about Foursquare, if you think about Gowalla, if you think about almost all the check-in models, they're all push-based insofar as, I mean, you're telling them where you are, you're shouting out, you're checking in. The consumer is in charge, and what seems to be happening is more and more every one of these services, when you launch them, it says, is it okay for us to know where you are? And what's starting to happen, and you're starting to see this in terms of some of the monetization strategies of Foursquare, is more and more information is going to the retailer, is going to the store, is going to companies that are around you physically, and they're going to start pulling you into them.
Yeah.
And so you won't. Yes.
In fact, one company that just came out this morning called PlacePop, it's at the top at TechCrunch, and I have a video on my YouTube channel with them, is doing loyalty programs for any retailer, and it's actually pretty innovative, and it lets the retailer have a much closer relationship with customers.
John?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, there's nothing more to add on to that. I think that discussion is very interesting. The weeks away comment that you made, Steve, is pretty fascinating. That would mean that something's got to pop right now. I mean, for this kind of thing to happen.
Well, I mean, Google Apple just unloaded Google's from search, as far as I can understand. I mean, what are they going to replace it with?
Well, I don't know the answer.
Well, I would say that they don't make a move like that if they don't have something to replace it with.
Unloaded them
Well,
from search
Bing?
from
What are
where?
they, Bing?
I don't know. There was a story that I read this morning in passing on FlipScam, and no, I didn't read FlipScam. I can't get into FlipScam. It was something that I read preparing for the show, and it basically said something about how they've dropped it in favor of something that they didn't say what they dropped it in favor of. So,
it's telling that all the iPhone 4s at the launch had Bing on them, but I think they're systematically going around trying to find ways to get the Google experience out of the iPhone. I mean, everybody knows they're going after location data. They're building their own location service and driving their own cars around and taking video and pictures of the street corner and capturing the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I mean, part of the experience of the iPhone that was so compelling was the use of and leveraging of Google services for the first 3 versions, and clearly that is over, and so they have to replace it.
Yeah, I have an interview with Skyhook's CEO, and Skyhook is the software that's inside of iPhones that does the location, and they've built a whole database and stuff like that. And I just read on TechCrunch that Apple has gotten rid of Skyhook out of the iPhone. So there's a lot of things that are changing because of Steve Jobs' need to be free of other companies. He doesn't like to be beholden to other companies, and he's going to invest a lot of money to get out of that dependence on other companies for building these kinds of services.
Well, what I find fascinating about the iPhone and the iPad right now is the direct assault on Office. People don't seem to realize that Office is, dare I say it, dead, at least as far as this new OS is concerned.
Yeah.
And it's not coming back on Google's platform either, because they've got competitive products.
Yeah.
So
it's very telling. I do a lot of traveling, like all of us on the call. And this last trip, I was sitting next to 2 guys. One had a Windows XP old-style Dell machine, and he was using Excel. And the guy next to him was a guy with an iPad, and he already had bought 200 apps for it. And he said, "I don't carry a laptop anymore to meetings." This was a vice president of a media company, and it's like, yeah, I'm hearing that more and more when I fly, the tools we have on iPad are so rudimentary compared to Excel. It's really fascinating to me to watch this world flip.
Okay, I need to fix the stream, so can you guys sort of carry the discussion for a couple of minutes?
So, Danny, what are we going to fight about next?
I don't know.
So where you? I mean, you have a sense of what you think is search. I think it's different than search. It's like an assistant to me, and it goes beyond search. But where do you think this is going to go? Because clearly there's something coming that's not going to Google and typing in a couple of words and waiting for a bunch of blue links to come back.
Yeah, but that's already. I mean, that's already been happening, and I don't know. I've written about this for like literally years, and I think the most telling thing that it's starting to get into people's minds was when Jobs was talking about how people don't supposedly search on the iPhone. You know, he said, "Oh, people don't search on the iPhone; they use apps. Apps are search. Apps
Yeah.
are little mini Googles. They're just not owned by Google." So, like when Yelp, I think they said like a quarter of their traffic now comes off the iPhone or queries off of it. Those are all searches. So I
Yeah.
can't say enough how search is not type it in and you get these blue links. And, you know, search is simply, I need an answer to something and I'm getting it.
Yeah.
And the companies that are going to be successful in search are the ones that provide these broad-based solutions. That's what Google is doing. That's what Google will be doing.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, Bing will want to do. Where Apple's challenge, I think, in all this resides is that, you know, as you said, there's stuff that they want to develop on their own. They'd like to have their own search technology, and they'd like to have, you know, their own location data. And in fact, because so much of what we do on our phone is related to search, even if it's not keywords, I need to find something, you know, here phone, here, you know where I'm at, locate what I need because
Yeah.
I, you know, clicked on a button that said restaurant. So they need those kinds of databases. And yet, we also, I think, want more from our phones that there's always something you're looking for that you don't have an app installed for. And that's Apple's real challenge is that you need that broad-based find the needle in the haystack type of search engine, and they don't have one. And I still don't see that they're going to develop one on their own. I think they're really stuck in that front, that they're going to have to continue to rely on providing people access to Google or Bing. And those are their choices, at least
Right,
in
but
the US.
there's nothing wrong with having two. They don't need an additional one right now. They can just ping pong back and forth between Microsoft and Google.
Yes, but if you're Apple and you feel like Google's coming at you and you feel like Microsoft's coming at you, you probably don't feel that great about the
I
fact
don't
that
think that Microsoft's coming at Apple. I think Apple's coming at Microsoft.
well,
Yeah.
okay, maybe Apple just thinks, oh, we don't have to worry about Microsoft, but they still have a lot more of the desktop share than they do. And
Yeah, but you know, I mean, if you listen to Ballmer, I mean, I don't know, John Taschek, did you read the transcript of Ballmer's comments?
Yeah, I read it this morning. It's really interesting. There's a genuine fear there that Ballmer was he basically admitted, you know, that they're well, the way he said it was, we think Apple's selling too many iPads, you know, or more iPads than we'd like them to sell, and it's our number one priority. But there's a fear. It's not just about the device, but about the whole experience, the user experience, where that used to be Windows, and now it's definitely Apple. And if you just read through the transcript, it wasn't a confident sounding transcript. It was.
Well, it was
and it
also
wasn't
not only
call to arms.
not only not confident, it was also wrong. I mean, he talks about how look around the room at a conference and you'll see all these laptops and they weigh nothing, and the reality is that people aren't buying and they're not spending double the money, as he puts it, for an iPad because they're replacing the Windows experience. They're abandoning the Windows experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Everything we've been
talking about on this show is about the relationship with mobile devices.
Yeah.
And they don't have a mobile device. And when he's whistling past the graveyard if he thinks that just because they've got scale in terms of market share, that's going to translate. I mean, how many people are going to buy a Zune pad? A Zune pad. I'm not buying that.
I'm not taking away from Microsoft has a big challenge with Apple, but I don't know that anybody. You guys know better, but are there that many people who actually just have iPads and that's it? Because from my understanding, if you even want your iPad to work, you got to plug it into a computer, right?
It's not that. It's people like Steve Rubel, clearly have other computers in their lives somewhere.
Right.
But they're carrying around the iPad. That's all they're using now. And I'm hearing this more and more. When I sit next to people on planes, they're telling me this. And if I'm seeing this happen in planes and with people I meet, not just geeks in the valley, but people I meet on
Right.
planes and stuff like that. I know it's a trend, and I bet Microsoft's marketers are noticing this trend too, and it's got to be worrying because first of all, if you buy an iPad, you're probably your next computer, if you're gonna buy one, is gonna probably be an Apple computer, so it works better with the iPad.
But why? Why
Yeah,
would
I
you,
think,
if you bought your iPad?
well,
I
decide
don't
you want
use
to
my
take?
Dell. Since getting the iPad, I have not turned on my Dell. That has to be worrying for Microsoft. I used to be a Microsoft fanatic. I worked at Microsoft, and I haven't touched a Microsoft machine in a long time.
But you're using a computer.
I'm using a computer, but I'm
Okay.
using a Macintosh right now to talk to you, and I have a Mac back here, and I have an
Right.
iPad. And I tell you what, I'm carrying around the iPad a lot more
I
than
use
I'm
the
carrying around the
iPad 75%
laptop.
of the time, have since the first day I got it. Now, that the other 25% is going to change as soon as there's a multitasking environment. As soon as they port iOS 4 to the iPad, that's going to free up a whole bunch of other services that right now I can only really use on the Mac.
Plus, like underneath my Skype video that's communicating with you, I have iMovie because I'm editing some videos, and iMovie is still better on a Mac than it is on a iPad or on an iPhone. I mean, I've used the iPhone version, but it's too rudimentary. It doesn't give me the control I need to do professional video editing. But how many people out of 1,000 people, how many do professional video editing? The iPad version for my wife is perfectly great.
All right, so we've got just a very few minutes because we have a hard stop at 2 today. So, Seth, I want to know, how do we translate what we've been talking about, which apparently doesn't have much to do with some of the stuff that's been going on, like there was an article in the New York Times that referenced your work in the beginnings of the whole attention, basically owning your own data. It doesn't, and Esther commented on it and basically said that you were working in this area 10 years ago. What is it that do people see the connection between what's happening with Zynga and some of these social gaming networks and the notion that people can actually get value for their attention?
I think attention's a complicated concept, as we learned, but I think data is less so, and data is the flip side of privacy. And I do think with Zynga, I think with Groupon,
I think you locked up.
with Swap,
You're locking up.
Blippi.
We need some subtitles.
The bandwidth is just sucking up your what you have to say. Let's start with. Okay, try it one more time, condensed.
Okay, so with all these new services like Swipely and Blippi, the ease of sharing your data has never been greater. With Facebook as well, and so there's no tax on us to expose our data, and there seems like there's value in doing so. I don't think we've gotten to the point where consumers understand the value of their data, but they are exposing it and transacting it much more now than they were 5 years ago.
Well, I think that they're exposing their understanding of that through the purchase of these kinds of devices. I think that they realize intuitively what Robert was talking about in terms of the application divide between the iPhone and the iPad and the rest of the marketplace. I think they intuitively understand that if they invest in a platform that's going to win, that they are going to get more value for the impressions that they give to that particular network. And I think that's the thing that's scaring the hell out of Google right now. It's just that they don't have a lock anymore on the higher end of the lead gen market. In other words, more qualified, more gesturing types of people are discovering that this is becoming very valuable to them in the enterprise space. Which, John, I think that's what we're experiencing with Chatter. Correct?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, that's about enough from you. You just can't shut him up. Danny, last thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. It's just going to continue to be interesting to watch the space. It's just been an astounding year so far. We've gone in 6 months from, Google rolling out its own phone and then shutting it down, but kind of jump starting a huge, resurgence in all these super phones on Android, to Apple rolling out, an iPad and causing people to change everything that they're going to be doing. I don't know. It's just been a dizzying range of changes, and I don't know. I wish I knew where all going to lead. I certainly don't, but it's fun to watch.
Seth? No. We're going to have to figure out. You're going to need a hotspot for the next time you come on the show.
I will. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just final thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is this is going to play out on the ground. These devices and these location-based services are going to move people to certain locations, and that could be a car dealership, that could be a restaurant, that could be a university in terms of one class over another, and it's going to flip a lot of the economic models in ways that I don't think Google, for one, is ready for.
Robert?
Yeah, I'd love to spend another hour. Too bad you have to run, because we haven't even talked about Bleco, and that would have been an interesting topic to talk with Danny about.
Magical.
New
Danny,
search
can you
engine.
stick around?
Just for a little bit. I
Okay.
can talk for
All
a
right,
couple
so
more minutes on Black Ops.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead, Robert.
But I'm seeing a lot of things that are being API'd that were never API'd before, like the massage salons. I mean, I would never have imagined that 3 years ago, that a massage salon would have a computer running their business that talks to the web, and the web can query that and do something with it. And I think Tungle, the calendar Tungle Me was just here this morning and talking about a new kind of calendar that uses these APIs to inform your calendar and make smart choices for you. I think we're going to see something really interesting over the next 18 months.
Okay, but what about Bleco?
Bleco, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, and I just see TechCrunch hyping it up and handing out 500 invites, and I wondered.
Have you played with it, Robert?
I'm gonna see it next week. They have me coming over and showing it to me next week. So I haven't yet seen it. It's one of the things I haven't seen. So
All right, well, maybe we can reconvene. I believe that we've got a commitment from Brett Taylor, the Facebook CTO, to be on the show next week. So maybe we can
excellent.
add him in. So I'll invite all of you guys back. And
Awesome.
And I want to thank Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, for his and their support, without whom this show would not be back on the air. And I want to thank NewTek and the TriCaster, without which this wouldn't be on video, both beginning with Leo Laporte's setup and now in our own studios. And I noticed that TechCrunch TV is also powered by the TriCaster. So these guys are doing some smart stuff. And Philip Nelson, you see pretty much popping up everywhere with every major star except Lady Gaga. I'm looking forward to when he actually gets in touch with her. I want to thank our guests, John Taschek, Danny Sullivan,
Thank you.
Seth
Thank you.
Goldstein, Robert Scoble, and finally, I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase, and I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.